I've got my prelim exams coming up and I'm absolutely cooked. Wait, that's you. That's why you're watching this video. So, ding ding ding. New series alert. I'm gonna be speedrunning a bunch of past paper questions from the NSW biology syllabus. Yeah, I live in Australia, just in case you guys don't know. But my tips are universal. I'm that good. So, without further ado, let's just get into this. Okay, so we'll get into the first question. Countercurrent exchange mechanisms are used for a variety of reasons in living organisms. The diagram shows concurrent and countercurrent flows in the fish gills. Now, for gas exchange, the most important thing to realize is obviously the gases are diffusing through the fish gills, especially the lamellae of those gills. Now, in concurrent flow, what's happening to the oxygen concentration in the water and in the blood? Here it's actually going down, and here it's obviously increasing. However, let's look at the countercurrent flow. This case, increasing concentration of oxygen. Here it's also increasing. So when we gotta explain why countercurrent flow is better, I can say that the concentration gradient is going to be maintained and it's going to be lower in the blood as compared to the rest of the water. So it's obviously going to diffuse into the bloodstream. All right, cool. But now we can see that it's obviously 2 marks, right? Let me just highlight some certain stuff. What else is required for this respiratory surface? So oxygen, it's going to be constantly in contact with the membrane, and that's obviously a very important thing for respiratory surfaces. All right, cool. Now let's take a look at the marking criteria. So yes, we are hitting the point saying oxygen concentration is always present and that it's continuously crossing the membrane and entering the blood. So yeah, our response is a 2 out of 2. Obviously, as the series progresses, I'll be getting better at kind of explaining the concepts. Right now, I guess my mind just focused on answering the questions. Question 24. The summary is emphysema is when alveoli enlargen. The alveoli will increase in size and its walls will end up breaking down. Oh my god. The question just tells me everything I need to know. It decreases the surface area for functional lung tissue. Symptoms include breathlessness, feeling fatigued. Yeah. Explain how it's leading to these symptoms. First of all, as mentioned, surface area is reducing. Decreased surface area is linked to less diffusion of oxygen through the respiratory membrane. So all of that's going to be compromised for individuals with emphysema. So what's going to happen is less oxygen travels to the blood and oxygen is required for cellular respiration. Cellular respiration produces energy, so less energy is produced in the body. And the question very nicely tells us that symptoms include breathlessness and feeling fatigued. Why do we feel breathless and fatigued? Because we need more oxygen. There you go. So key points: less surface area, less transport efficiency, less oxygen enters the cells for respiration, so less energy is produced. Hence the person feels fatigued and breathless. So if you look at the marking criteria, let's see what points we hit. Yes, I described the surface area and how it reduces. Less gas exchange, yes, less oxygen in blood, and with limited oxygen, the blood cells cannot undergo sufficient cellular respiration and person feels fatigued. Perfect. All right, question 28. I'm going to read this question out because it's quite a long question.
And a fun one.
A scientist wanted to investigate the population of ladybirds that were in direct competition for aphid prey. Oh my god. Okay. It's already giving me one of the answers. I'm giving you a spoiler right there. Okay. The scientists set up 3 cultures, A, B, and C. 1 ladybird was added to culture A, different species to culture B, so both are independent from each other. And in culture C, they're both together. Okay, With reference to figures 1 and 2, so your graphs, we have to analyze the ecological relationships between the two beetles. So the question just spoon-fed us what the relationship is. Direct competition. They're both competing for aphids. I also prepared like a small marking criteria as to, what's going to get us these 5 marks. Because holy crap. So obviously making reference to both graphs and more specifically certain statistics from those graphs. For example, if we look at culture C, there is an increasing trend for both beetles state between what particular days. So for the first 6 days, both beetle populations are going to be increasing. However, after 6 days, what's happening here? C. maculat, that population is decreasing. H. axarides' population is just becoming stable or plateaued. As in, okay, there's a perfect balance between prey and predator populations, and as a result, it's not going to increase more and more. What's important here is, why is this population decreasing and why is the other one going to be more stable? Obvious answer is because C. maculat got outcompeted. They are outcompeted because H. axarides is better suited to that environment. The relationship is going to be competition, identifying the trends. So for cultures A and B, when the beetles are kept separately, their populations will increase until they end up plateauing just because they reach their carrying capacity. For culture C, both beetle populations end up increasing, but when these trends diverge is after 6 days. The population of H. axarides ends up plateauing, reaching carrying capacity, whereas the population of C. maculat decreases and hits 0 on day 16, as in they went extinct in that particular area. What else can we say? Okay, maybe we can compare what's happening between one particular graph, so H. axarides here, and H. axarides in this graph. So I am noticing that there is some sort of discrepancy in how these populations increase. And I guess the simplest explanation is because, even though H. axarides is more suited to that particular environment, it's still competing for finite resources. And as a result, the graphs look slightly separate. So, okay, describing the trends. Perfect. Explaining the difference in carrying capacity because it's better suited to the environment. Perfect. Carrying capacity is lower. Okay, yeah, that's what I was looking for. Oh my god. It feels like we've cheated, right? 5 out of 5. So main tip, you cube your questions and you just make up like a mini marking criteria. And finally, it's time for the question which is going to fry our minds. So obviously this is going to be a stimulus. Let's focus on the actual question. Using our knowledge on Darwin and Wallace's theory of evolution by natural selection, we have to analyze the evolution of cane toads as said in the following stimulus. So let's break down the stimulus. Okay, urban habitats, they isolate the populations from each other. And as we know, isolation equals speciation. That's a free mark right there. Next, they're going to be discussing parotoid glands, which secrete bufotoxins to defend toads from predators, and these parotoid glands being smaller in urban populations. Then we also have tibiofibular lengths, and in males, this is longer than in females, especially in urban populations. So there could be several reasons as to why. Obviously, the males want to mate with the females and thus may be more migratory. Females may be more sedentary in lifestyle. Maybe that's just my own knowledge. Oh wait, it just says it right here. The males tend to move more often than females, and it says something about sedentary lifestyle of females. They move further to overcome barriers such as roads and buildings. Perfect. So when doing an evolution question, especially anything to do with Mod 3 in the NSW syllabus, there's a very set structure as to how you answer this. And I like to boil it down to VSRGC. So obviously there's going to be your variation in population. There's going to be a selecting agent, which basically determines whether some individuals survive or die. surviving individuals are gonna reproduce and pass down their genes to the next generation. And as a result, you get a gradual change in the proportion of individuals in that population which possess certain characteristics. So there's going to be variation in terms of tibiofibular length in males. Your selecting agent is going to be your barriers, such as roads and buildings. So these aren't necessarily killing off the toad populations, it's just preventing them from reaching the ladies, mating with them, and obviously having kids. So the males with a longer length are going to be reaching the ladies and passing down those genes. And that's why size matters. Now we get a gradual change. So the proportion of individuals with longer tibiofibular lengths is going to increase in urban areas. Also, because it's an analyzed question, we may have to explain something else, unfortunately. So maybe it's just about identifying some other features which differ in these populations. That can be your size of parotoid glands, or also the converse trend for tibiofibular length, so the length in females instead of males, which is actually decreasing. So when we analyze, we basically just have to say to what extent, to what degree is something happening. Holy, achieves 11 to 12 of the following. So we got to recognize all of these features: smaller parotoid glands, longer leg bones in males, and shorter leg bones in females, like I just mentioned. Next thing, they use VNAH, I used VSRGC, doesn't really matter. Urbanization creates isolation, isolation creates speciation. However, in this case, it's not really speciation. It could happen eventually, but we can just say evolution's being accelerated. Okay, now we gotta explain they have smaller parotoid glands because less defense, In urban areas, because of humans, predators such as snakes just have been driven out. As a result, you don't need to hold so much bufotoxin. Hence, you won't be selected based on how much yield. And females evolved shorter legs because these frogs cannot move as fast, allowing for male frogs to catch them and breed more often, passing down these traits. And this is why I say always overmark your questions. And what I mean by this is your marker is always gonna be an ass. Alright? They're always gonna give some specific thing to mark you down. So as a result, if you know even the tiniest bit of extra information, just include it. Hey, I'll only tell you what works, right? So yeah, I know. This might be awkward. It's a new series and everything. So if you guys want to see more stuff like this, write that down in the comments. If you have friends who are as cooked as you, share them this video. If you want to see more of these upcoming videos, or to see me flex my biology knowledge, subscribe to the channel. What are you doing here, bro? Go away.